everybody. Hi, it's Charlie. And I actually said that very confidently. I don't 100% know who it is. We've been really dissociated all day, and there's been someone nearby all day. But it's primarily Charlie right now. Um, and today I wanted to talk about just some of our advice that we have for baby systems. So people who are newly discovered or questioning whether or not they're a system. Um, and take this with a grain of salt. We're not professionals. We are still fairly new to discovering all this ourselves. I mean, it's a lifelong disorder. We still have many, many, many years, hopefully, to grow and change and learn. Um, but because we're in a place where many people ask us for advice on how we've dealt with things and everything, I figured we'd compile it a little bit for people who are in those beginning stages. Um, and you're going to notice a cohesive follow through throughout all of these, or many of these. So sorry if it sounds repetitive, but focus on you. Don't focus on your alters. That's the main thing. Um, and that's really, really hard when you're first discovering this and feeling a huge loss of control. You want to learn anything and everything you can to categorize things and make it make sense for yourself and regain some of that feeling of control. So let's just go through some of these, and I'll kind of explain why that is as we go. So if you overcategorize, and I'm talking about things where people discover their system, and me talking about this is from experience too. We did all of this, I think. We didn't necessarily do all of the things that we're going to touch on, but we did the categorizing thing. We're still having to do work. I should have this on silent. Yeah. We're still having to do work to undo some of the harm we caused by overcategorizing in the very beginning, which is why I'm talking about this. So trying to make lists of every alter with getting their name, getting their pronouns, getting how long they've been in the system, what role they might have in the system, certain preferences like foods or colors or whatever, all of that, especially people really tend to like to figure out all the alter sexualities, which honestly is really weird to me and kind of not cool. First of all, there's one thing within your system, there are people who are not going to want to share that with you. That's private information. But beyond that, the fact that a lot of people try to figure this out about their headmates and then share it online, it's a big red flag, especially because there's a lot of privacy that is needed and needed to be respected when it comes to systems. Anyways, the more that you're focusing your energy outwards, not on yourself, but on the alters. Sorry, also, I have paint hands. I'm not dying. The more you focus outward, the more that the alters in your system are going to feel like you are pushing and trying to get something out of them. Especially during a time when not all of them might feel ready for you to be aware of your system. And that might already be raising some hesitancies and some negative feelings. So if you're trying to push them to tell you all this information about themselves, that's only going to heighten that tension. Now combine that with the fact that if I'm assuming you're the host who's listening to this, or that's kind of who I'm speaking to, they have spent their entire life, most likely, pretending to be you. They've not spent their lives trying to figure out who they are as individuals. That has been very intentionally put to the side. Because everything's about masking and everything is about appearing as the host. So if suddenly overnight you're like, tell me everything about yourself, I want to know like these, all these bullet points, either it's going to be uncomfortable because they're going to either not answer or say no, which could add tension, or at least there could be the fear of that adding tension, or people will just scramble to give you answers. Um, and that ends up, that's one of the things that we're struggling with in our system, that we did that. Um, and a lot of people just kind of gave random answers because they hadn't had the time with our system being open and self-aware to actually explore who they were as individuals. So they were just kind of word vomiting the first things that came to mind, and then we put them into that category. And since then, it's had to be a lot of work to undo and deconstruct that and actually figure out what the true answer is. It's like if suddenly like think about the most basic things just in your like friend group. If you're known for being the one who like loves the color purple and everyone's always like making you little things with the color purple or pointing out things that are purple to you because one day you're like, oh yeah, like you were like going shopping with your friends and you tried on a purple dress and you're like, oh yeah, purple's my favorite color, and that just like stuck. And then you end up kind of hating the color, and it just gets kind of worse and worse the more that people connect it to who you are, because you're like, that's not who I am. Do you not even know me? But like even something as impersonal as that can be hard to break down just because of social discomfort. So when you're doing that with something as deep as people's identity within the structure of a DID system, it can get really messy. And it can be really hard to work your way out of. So instead of focusing on your alters, I recommend you focus on yourself. And that mostly comes in the form of working on decentering yourself, working on letting go of control, and working on accepting that this is a life that is shared, that's not just yours, and working on accepting that you're not necessarily going to get the answers that you want right now. And it's not about giving you the answers that you want. It's about you letting go and making space for others. And they can give you or not give you those answers when or not they want to. You know what I mean. So there's that. On a separate note, other little recommendations for baby systems. Also, I hope that that doesn't sound like a like patronizing term. That's just kind of what we've heard the community call newly discovered systems, and we think it's kind of cute. Remember that just because someone's a system does not make them safe. It also does not make them an expert on what DID is. No one just finds out they have a disorder and then suddenly becomes an expert in it overnight. You have to go through a lot of time to uncover and learn more about it, learn more about your own experience, maybe do research on the actual scientific stuff behind it and everything. Everyone's experience is also going to be different. And just because someone believes something really strongly does not mean that that's going to be the case for everyone. Also, systems are traumatized people. We're very traumatized people, and traumatized people sometimes act out and lash out and are not the healthiest people to be around. Systems are not inherently safe. Just because someone's been abused does not mean that they will not ever be abusive. It's an unfortunate truth. Also, if you're like really in the beginning of discovering your system, don't attach too strongly to this disorder. Really work on ruling out other possible disorders with an open mind. Try to get in with a therapist, try to get in with a professional, and make sure you find a professional who is open to the possibility of DID, who is knowledgeable with DID as much as you can find or is willing to do the work to learn about DID. But so long as they're willing to do that and they are viewing that as a distinct possibility, if they tell you that they don't think you have it, listen to them. Don't just change therapists because you think that they just are writing you off or something. Like if you go to someone and they're like, oh yeah, like I don't believe in DID, I don't work with DID. Of course, if you're trying to rule that out as a possibility, you need to go to someone who considers that as a possibility. But don't leave them just because they're leading you in a different direction. If you have something else, that's great. Find out what you actually are dealing with. Don't attach to this. It's not a fun life. Okay. Another thing with focusing internally on yourself instead of externally on the others in your system is really work on understanding, instead of understanding who the other alters are, because that's going to inherently lead you to probably more analyzing your different emotions and the different sides of yourself instead of the other actual people who are there. And then you're going to get really confused and make your alter lists and everything. And there's likely going to be people who are not actually separate alters. That's just you when you're at work. So instead of focusing on who might be different, focus on yourself and learning how to identify other influences, learning how to identify when something is like passive influences happening, and working on understanding the boundaries of who you are. And then you can identify what's coming into that from outside. So instead of trying to figure out who are you, figure out who are you. And then you can start to understand the rest of the sphere a little bit better. Be patient. It's a lifelong disorder. This disorder never goes away. Even if you fuse all the way down to 1, you can always split again. And the other comorbidities and everything, PTSD, everything, it'll always be there. You don't need to rush this. Just take your time. Things that I would suggest to be wary of. And so for a very long time, EMDR was kind of the go-to DID treatment plan. And as more research has come out on how DID structurally works, it's actually been discovered that that can be really dangerous for systems, because the whole structure of your system and why you exist is to keep you unaware of certain traumas that you're not ready to know. If you forcibly are trying to put yourself in a hypnotic state to uncover traumas, that's going to cause a whole shock to the system and be doing the exact opposite of what the safety measures of your whole system are there to prevent. So that's going to send you into a chaos spiral, possibly. EMDR can be really helpful for some systems, but really talk to your therapist, make sure you trust them at that point, and I would suggest not doing it until you're pretty far down the line with healing. That being said, we are not professionals in that field. This is just what I've heard, what I've gathered from talking to people and listening to people who I trust and reading what I can. And just ultimately really remember that while validating alters as individuals is important, remembering that you're all part of the same whole is so important. And trying to over separate is really anti-healing. And we see a lot of that in our community. And people who are trying to validate each other as individuals so much and to such an extreme sense that it kind of loses touch with what DID actually is, and also really puts a lot of blocks in your way for healing. And I'm not saying that fusion is the way to heal from this. I'm not saying that you have to fuse to heal. But bringing down amnesia barriers and recognizing that you are all part of the same whole who might have had different experiences and be different because of that, but really ultimately are in the same body with the same life, it's essential. it's essential to being able to work together and heal. And again, take anything and everything that I just said with a grain of salt, because I'm not a professional. This is just my advice and what we have come to in our time of doing self-work and going through therapy and everything, for our own system. And that's kind of what and we were told this, not all of it, but we were told some of this when we were a baby system ourselves. And there's some of it that I wish we had listened to better. And there's also some of it that we never heard. So I hope that you guys can listen to this and that it can potentially help some people out there. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. And also, this isn't just for baby systems. This is for everyone out there. You can still be dealing with this like 5 years in and then be like, oh shit, this over categorizing is actually fucking with us. Anyways, have a wonderful day, everyone.